I am Travis Ho. I am part of the customer success team here at Verix. I'm focused on value articulation of our offerings, as well as helping our customers leverage data and use it as a competitive advantage, but ultimately in the long term, the goal is to benefit the patients. I've been in this space for about a decade now, focused on data management and advanced analytics purely for life sciences. So I'd like to thank Greg, my co-presenter, for joining me today. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks Travis. So my name is Greg Palco. I'm currently the head of the oncology franchise for North America for Kyowa Kirin in the US. I'm based in Princeton, New Jersey. And I've been in the industry for many, many moons with a lot of focus on the oncology space, probably at least the last 25 years. So I'm happy to be here with Travis. Thank you.
Great. So we'd like to walk through our partnership today, and as a part of that, we're going to touch on some of these items. So first and foremost, the challenges of operating in a rare disease space, the complexities around diagnosis, and then the difficulty of finding those patients in the real world. We'll then review kind of how we go about finding that proverbial needle in the haystack in terms of patient identification, and then talk about how we turn data into actionable intelligence for end users to best engage with healthcare providers. Rare disease is difficult, so precision medicine is here to stay, and small patient populations make it incredibly difficult to navigate the market. What we want to do is understand the market dynamics and the myriad of patient pathways that are out there and understand what leads to a potential diagnosis and follow trends, patterns, but more importantly, use technology, that technology at our disposal to do that. We're continuously marching towards this concept of personalized medicine, but in the same vein, we also want to elevate the engagements that we have with our stakeholders with a personalized approach. And that allows us to maximize the value of each of those interactions. I'm going to pass it to Greg to provide a little background on Kyowa Kirin and the challenges we're hoping to solve together.
Sure. So many people may not know Kyowa Kirin except for maybe Kirin beer, which is very good, by the way. So we're a global pharmaceutical company. Our headquarters are in Japan, but we've branched into North America over the last couple of years. We have offices in Princeton, New Jersey, which is where our commercial teams are located. We have research out in La Jolla, California. And we also have global colleagues throughout the world, but with a core based outside of London. We're a company that focuses on technology and treating patients not only with rare disease, but other diseases as well. And then in the United States, we have 3 core products. One is Poteligeo, which is for T-cell lymphoma, which is what I focus on. We have a rare disease drug called Crysvita, and we also have a Parkinson's drug called Nourions. Thanks, Travis. Oh, I'm still going, aren't I? Yes. So again, I think for our company and our organization, we've spent a lot of time thinking about rare disease. It's an area of focus, not only currently, but also where we're going. And you can see some of the statistics on the slide, but it's amazing because so many of the rare diseases, which can be genetic, they can be handed down from parents to children. A lot of the rare diseases don't really have great therapies, although in our industry, we're making great strides. It's very difficult in the rare disease area, and it's very important to really be able to find patients. And that's one of the challenges in a rare area. And when you think about oncology, not only we have big cancers like breast cancer, lung cancer, but there's a ton of very rare oncology diseases. So we in the oncology space face the same issues. That's finding patients, uncovering where they are, trying to understand where they are in their patient journey. So if you go to the next slide, Travis. So the one that we focus on within Kyowa Kirin is cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. To give you just a brief overview, imagine having a rash on your skin, on your wherever, it could be anywhere on your body, and you go to the dermatologist and you're itching like crazy, and for maybe 6 or 7 years, you stay in the dermatologist's office getting creams and ointments and not really getting a great diagnosis. It takes a long time. Maybe by the time you're about 6 or 7 years through that, you may get referred finally to a specialist, and then you hear that you have cancer, right? So, but it's very, very rare, but it is cancer. So as you progress through your journey, like every other cancer patient, you can have morbidity and you can have bad outcomes. A few things about the disease, again, as I said, it's rare. We see about 3,000 patients on therapy, systemic therapies throughout the United States. If you have a patient of Black or Hispanic descent, it's very hard to diagnose because it's hard to see on the skin. And then once you're referred to the hematologist or oncologist, again, hematologists and oncologists don't see this disease very much, so trying to pinpoint when you can help educate those physicians can be very, very difficult. Travis. Oh, I'm still going, sorry. So there's a few challenges. Now we happen to have a product that's IV, which is a buy and bill product. So trying to understand the market can be very difficult. So the data within the market can be very complex. We look at claims data, we look at EMR data, but nothing ever covers the disease 100%. So there's a lot of complexity in understanding the data and what you see from what you purchase as an organization. I mentioned the patient journey. We have a very heterogeneous patient journey. They can go from dermatologists to oncologists to specialty centers to centers of excellence. They can be on multiple therapies, which include skin-directed, systemic, et cetera. So there's no one size fits all, and it's very, from a physician's perspective, a lot of times it's about the art of their clinical science that helps the patients through. The time sensitivity, however, is one of the most difficult challenges that we see. So oftentimes in the community, a physician may see one or two patients. So trying to get in to see that physician with, let's say, a sales representative at the right time can be difficult. You'll often hear, last patient I saw was 6 months ago. Therapy decisions have already been made. Opportunities to engage those customers and the healthcare practitioners, it's very hard to get there at the right time with the right message. So that's one of the challenges that we engage with our Verix colleagues to really try to solve as we move forward.
Thanks, Greg. So through immersive conversations with both medical and commercial teams at Kirin, we really focus our objective on these points. Timing, as Greg said, is of the essence. There's a window for us to provide valuable information to healthcare providers at a particular point in that patient's journey. Predicting new patients or guiding field teams to HCPs that are treating a particular patient profile is very important. Beyond that, we then need the field to understand why they are being told about a particular physician at this particular time. So providing additional context as to why someone is important, the urgency behind that information, and additional contextual information to drive and engage conversations with healthcare providers. We call that explainability. And then, of course, we need to be able to do this on an ongoing basis in a repeatable fashion. And so we look at this more as a dynamic execution engine rather than a periodic analytics exercise. And so finding patients is one thing, but we also want to be able to monitor ongoing patients that are on therapy on an ongoing basis. We're able to use data science, machine learning, and our platform to understand the underlying reasons that lead to a new patient start. That in turn becomes a predictive alert that is delivered to the field. For patients that are on therapy, interestingly enough, some side effects actually may indicate a favorable response to the therapy. And so we want to surface those scenarios and arm the field with information for them to potentially take interventional action, like discussing symptom management with a healthcare provider. Because we're doing this through a platform, we're able to continuously ingest real-world execution data coming from Kirin, coupled with updated patient-level information. And then that in turn provides the insights that the field teams use to guide their engagements with providers. Greg, do you want to talk about some of the impact we've seen to date?
Yes, I'd love to, Travis. So to give you guys a view, so you almost have to go back like to the historic good old days, right? And when I say the good old days, I'm talking about like January of this year. So again, if in our model, the claims data that we were seeing, if we're lucky, we're seeing about 50% of the market. So if you're a sales representative, you can see 50% possibly, right, if you get the right level data of claims. But we're kind of giving them before the Verix project at a very high level. The other 50% is what we'd like to say boots on the ground, right? You're going to go in, you're going to go try to understand your territory. So while we're a relatively small organization with about 30 reps in the field, of those 30 reps, I'd say 3 or 4 were really good at trying to find patients. And how did they do it? Good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet, how to manage their territory, try to understand what the flows are. Here, go, again, the boots on the ground example, go to a dermatologist's office and hear that some patient was referred to Dr. Hematologist over here, and try to map that all out. And even with that, a lot of the data sets we were sending out to the field weren't very often. They might have been, on a monthly basis. We were getting, so we used McKesson, we were getting, daily vials sent to customers, but that is oftentimes after the fact. That means a patient's ready for therapy. So one of the things that we really wanted to do is how could we give the field more tools so they could better plan and be more effective at getting that right message at the right time. So in the process, we were able to send, we call them triggers. The triggers identify a new patient. They identify a patient who's on an existing therapy who may be ready for our product. They, as Travis said, they may identify a toxicity that you might be able to intervene on, especially if it's something that either a sales rep or an MSL can work through. So what we did was on a weekly basis, we were able to, using the machine learning process, feed in data, feed in every claims data set that we have. And as we're looking for other sources, whether it be EMR or our digital expression, and then be able to also give like kind of almost a red light, yellow light, green light. So you can give the field a view of where they could go first. And then while they're planning their week, then they know where the white space is, which can be your drop-ins. And everyone knows here that access in every therapeutic category, including oncology, isn't always easy. So if you go into a doctor's office, you may not get a lunch for a month and still miss patients, et cetera. So that's kind of what we did. And what we've noticed is we've been watching through, we have a high rate, as it kind of says on the slide, a high rate of our reps following the triggers. The feedback has been fantastic that everything's valuable. And then they can also, again, in the priority level, you can tell how close a patient potentially is, de-identified of course, to some kind of a message. And again, we can train and we can teach our field to be ready with the right messages for the right time. So it's been very effective. And we're about, what are we in September? All intents and purposes show that our uptake on demand has been increasing. Now I know it's very hard to pinpoint one program to increases in demand, but there is some correlation there, and so we think that there's some traction here with this program.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And so at the core of the solution is the Tovana Commercial Optimization Platform. This consists of 3 components. First is a pharma-centric data foundation that organizes data across the pharma ecosystem into an analytics-ready format. And then we have our analytics engine, which includes advanced analytics models, AI and ML, where we can operationalize analytics, run them at scale in a repeatable fashion, and tease insights out of the data along the way. And then we have the application itself. So Tovana comes with pharma-specific applications, dynamic targeting, channel optimization, just to name a few, but in the case of Kyowa Kirin, we're leveraging our patient pathway application. And what we are doing here, again, is looking at the data, using it to predict new patient starts, using it to monitor on-therapy patients, and arm the field with the intelligence they need to best engage with HCPs. Patient pathways are rare pathways in particular, are very complex and hard to navigate. So a traditional, I'll call it a more static approach to this analysis, looking at hard-coded rules, is difficult to scale, prone to error and bias. And so by using a platform like Tovana, we're able to continuously monitor and interrogate the data that we have to understand clinical events. And then by looking at those clinical events in concert with patient and HCP behavior, surfacing the most relevant insight to the end user at the right time. So we talked about how the field consumes the information, but we also wanted to be seamless in terms of integrating with the workflow. We wanted to not burden the end users with trying to figure out how to answer specific questions or where the data is coming from or how to interpret the data. So by using that explainability in terms of the contextual insights, we're able to turn the data into actionable intelligence for them to then understand how do I engage and what is the message that should be tailored based on the specific information I received.
Yeah, Travis, maybe if I could just interject too, another component that was very important. So one of the fears we had as on the client side was to have false positives, aka don't send your field out and chasing things that aren't relevant. So we spent a lot of time with the Verix team, along with our medical team, to really verify that the triggers were clinically relevant, were relevant to the patient flow and patient journey, so that we could eliminate sending the wrong triggers. So we spent a lot of time. So that was also really important process rather than just generically saying, here's what the claims tell you.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, reducing noise is very, very important. And so just a little bit of science behind the application itself. So what we're looking to do here is use the patient pathway application to predict patients that may be best suited for their drug, but also once they're on therapy, continue to monitor those patients. The application itself uses models to create a patient sequence which takes into account different clinical activities, including the order and recency of those. The models themselves then help us identify patient pathways that are most likely to result in an actual patient. This is that kind of patient prediction component. The same principles are applied for monitoring patients that are on therapy on a continuous basis, but the parameters are obviously changed given that we know that they're on therapy. So let's talk about how this is deployed at Kyowa Kirin. So the Verix platform is providing predictive alerts around new patient starts, also contextual information about risks that may be leading indicators of discontinuations. But we're also looking at the propensity of an HCP to adopt or write their product. And so bringing in the contextual insights, explainability, as I mentioned before, we're equipping the field to then begin strategizing, how do I engage? But they need to take into account the urgency of the information they're receiving, how accessible a physician is, and that physician's familiarity with the brand. And taking those into consideration, they can then use the different channels at their disposal to understand, based on the information I have, this is the best path forward based on physician, based on message, and based on where the patient is in their journey. And so today, the field is consuming these insights. We're capturing actions on the back end, and that allows us to do continuous measurement of the performance of the solution. And as Greg said, we're really happy with the promising results so far. That's backwards. Okay, so in summary, our goal was obviously to elevate the experience of both healthcare providers and patients in the rare disease space, particularly impacted by the disease we spoke about, CTCL. We're using a platform approach that allows us to continuously monitor and optimize and tease out insights that are then turned into actionable intelligence for the field to go to work. They can use the tools at their disposal, the different channels that they have access to engage with these physicians, deliver an appropriate message at the right time in hopes for the greatest impact. Greg, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think one of the differences about this program, so obviously, we're all interested in machine learning and AI. We've done a few other projects in that realm, and one of the things I notice is that when you interact with companies, there's often like an off-the-shelf program. So take your data, drop it in the off-the-shelf box, so to speak, and you get what you get. And you may not get everything you need, or you may get some great things. But with this process, while it's a platform that could be applied to any product in our organization or any rare disease or anything, the process is also customizable. So it's very relevant for the disease you're working on and the specifics of your product. So using one last example, so one of the toxicities we have as an agent happens to be the same thing that patients present with, which is like a rash. So it's like an autoimmune. So a lot of education is required. So that's not something that you'll see in I don't use the word generic, but a generic AI system. You'll just kind of get top line view. But by going a few levels down, it becomes much more relevant to the disease, the journey that patient's on, and the product that you happen to be working on. So again, I think it was so far so good, and we have a commitment to analyze from a more critical perspective as we get to the end of this year. And then if things go forward, we want to see where we can also apply this either in evolution of what we're doing or to other products in the portfolio as well.
Great. Yeah, and so I want to thank Greg and his team for being such great partners and joining me on stage today. I think we have time for questions if there are any immediate ones. If not, please feel free to swing by the booth, track us down, and we'd love to talk further. So appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Okay. Honestly, you can't see anything.
Hey, thank you very much. Great presentation. I have a couple of questions. One is, how long might it take to train the model that you have? And secondly, consider that you talked about the propensity to prescribe. Let's say that it's a launch, so there isn't, there hasn't been any prescriptions made. It would be great to understand how you get to that propensity to prescribe, or if you use different analogs for that.
Yeah, so I'll tackle these real quick. The first question around how long to train a model, I'm going to cop out the answer here, but it depends, right? It depends on how much historical data we have. Is it robust enough to get us to a model performance that we're happy with? But also the complexity of the objective of a model. It could be pretty straightforward and you can get to results very quickly, assuming you have the historical data to train a model on. But if it's a more complex objective that the model is looking for, there's going to be a bit of an iteration, but we're not talking multiple months here. It's a pretty rapid turnaround.
Yeah.
Really interesting question on the launch. So I'll take a first step. Greg, you might.
So you finish because I'll answer both as well from our perspective, because I think I can help too.
So if in a launch scenario, right, when you're looking at physician HCP propensity, that doesn't exist because it's in a launch state. It's very apparent. But you can actually look at proxy products or analogs, but you can also bring in, I'll call it more attitudinal and behavioral data, right? You can look at the trends of early adopters versus the can't teach an old dog new trick prescribers, right? And so bringing in behavioral attributes of those physicians, even though you don't have their historical experience with the brand that you're in the midst of launching, can at least guide you towards and provide directionality as to who you might see earlier uptake with in the process.
Yeah. So to give you a real world example of what we experienced, we kicked off our project in January of this year. We were training at a sales meeting, our field, on how to use the trigger program in March. So, I mean, again, I think that's a pretty fast turnaround. The team at Verix, they sit down with you and go through it. And then again, there is some need to bring your internal folks, like your medical team, on board. But we're all collectively working towards the same goal, which is to help our patients do better. On the second part, what I think from a pre-launch perspective or the patients on, so we're looking at, which is the same thing it would be in that case, diagnostic data, right? In our case, we look at flow cytometry, we look at diagnosis codes, we look at previous therapies and the claims. So again, instead of it's like not just a diagnosis claim, but it's claims even on competitive therapies. You can tell if somebody's on another therapy by an ancillary medicine that they may be getting for solving a toxicity or solving a progression. So it's quite interesting that you can probably use this in a lot of ways, from the before you're there, while you're there, and then, to progress further. So I think the applicability is pretty wide.
Appreciate the questions.
So it's so wonderful to be able to see that you can get into the timing for the patient journey, but what happens in terms of privacy, and also what's the reaction been from the healthcare providers who may be finding that representatives are coming with surprising alacrity right when they're needed, and are you concerned about any blowback from that?
Yeah, so I'll take that on. So that's 100%